So, Ubisoft is finally doing it. They actually smashed the emergency glass and pulled out the Assassin's Creed Black Flag remake. And dude, I'm honestly conflicted. On one hand, we're finally going back to the more traditional style of Assassin's Creed, leaving behind that overly grindy RPG-centric formula where you basically needed to buy a time saver pack just to enjoy the experience, without pulling your hair out. But on the other hand, you have to look at the absolute state of this company to understand why this is happening right now. Just look at the headlines. Tencent acquires 25% stake in Ubisoft's new gaming subsidiary. And after their stock absolutely cratered to a fraction of what it was a few years ago, they're pretty desperate right now. This isn't some passionate creative decision made by artists who love the pirate life. This is a calculated corporate maneuver to save a sinking ship. But hey, if bending the knee to fans and giving us what we actually want is their last resort, then I guess we take those wins where we can get them. For a while now, Ubisoft has been nothing but a shadow of what they used to be. I used to always keep my eyes open for the next Ubisoft game, but now, they've had canceled projects left and right. Like, remember XDefiant? Yeah, that got thrown in the trash bin after they realized they couldn't squeeze enough juice out of it. They're restructuring studios, laying people off, and basically begging for a lifeline because their massive bloated open world games aren't printing money like they used to. And then Tencent swoops in with over €1 billion to buy a chunk of their new subsidiary just to keep the lights on for franchises like Far Cry and Assassin's Creed. So when they officially announced this Black Flag remake, nobody had the surprised Pikachu face. We all knew that they were gonna pull a nostalgia bait move to try to win back some goodwill. The well was running dry, and they needed a guaranteed hit before the investors completely pulled the plug and sold the whole company for parts. It's sad to see a titan of the industry fall this hard, but they've really brought it upon themselves. And honestly, it's about time they realize the current formula is absolute garbage. After multiple Assassin's Creed games of chasing this massive, bloated, 100-hour RPG trend, players are just exhausted. They created the problem by filling their maps with millions of useless icons, damaged sponge enemies, and progression systems that felt like a second job. And then they had the audacity to solve the problem they created by selling you an XP booster in the store. I mean, that's very considerate of them. It's the kind of predatory design that just slowly drains your soul while you play. But now, with the Black Flag remake, they're just stripping all that away. They're going back to a game where assassinations are actually assassinations, and not just a math equation where your hidden blade bounces off a guard's neck because he's 2 levels higher than you. We're going back to a time when games actually designed to be fun, rather than designed to keep you logged in for as long as possible, so you might accidentally buy a glowing horse armor cosmetic. Now, I will say from what they've shown so far, this isn't just a cheap coat of paint. They're adding a lot of new content and bringing fresh changes. It's completely rebuilt on the Anvil engine, and it looks like a proper current generation game. They've got this new dynamic weather system that actually affects naval combat and exploration, which sounds pretty cool. And they've apparently overhauled the stealth so it's less punishing, and you don't instantly fail a mission just because some guard saw your toes sticking out from a bush. Getting caught doesn't just give you a game over screen anymore, it forces you to adapt and fight your way out, which is exactly how it should have been in the first place. So the new gameplay is getting some much needed modernization without turning it into a stats heavy loot fest. The combat is faster, the parries are smoother, and you're just back to being a pirate causing absolute chaos in the high seas. And yeah, pre-orders are already up for $60. Or, well, 200 if you want like some crazy collector's edition. But here's the thing, a remake doesn't really change the fundamental problem with Ubisoft right now. Sure, playing as Edward Kenway again is gonna be fun, and ship combat is always a good time, but we already know this game is good because it came out over a decade ago. Remaking a classic is the easiest layup in the industry. It doesn't prove that Ubisoft has learned how to make a good game in 2026. We need them to make a brand new original title so we can see just what direction they're heading in before we start crowning them as the comeback kings. because right now, all I see is a desperate publisher using one of their most beloved games as a meat shield to protect themselves from total financial ruin. Honestly, this all means that Ubisoft is starting to clean up their act a little bit, but I'm keeping my expectations buried underground. They still have a lot of trust to earn back, and one good remake isn't gonna erase years of anti-consumer practices and boring copy-pasted open world designs. It's just like the EA and BioWare situation. BioWare used to be the top of the world when it came to RPGs. You bought a BioWare game, you knew you were getting a masterpiece, and then the corporate rot set in. The budgets got inflated, and everything just went downhill. Mass Effect Andromeda was such a colossal buggy failure, with completely forgettable characters that it essentially put the entire franchise on ice for years. They tried to chase trends, they tried to rush out a product on a game engine that wasn't built for it, and they alienated their core audience in the process. And instead of learning from that mistake, they just kept doubling down on the exact same corporate mindset that ruined them in the first place. And then you look at Dragon Age Veilguard, which was supposed to be their big return to form, but instead of giving gamers an enjoyable, gritty, dark fantasy experience, it felt like a game that was more concerned with educating players on gender. The whole narrative around that game became hyper-focused on social commentary and making sure every single character spoke like a modern-day human resources representative. You had one of the companions giving these long-winded speeches about being non-binary that just felt completely out of place for the lore of Thetis. And look, representation is fine, but when your dialogue sounds like it was written by a committee of consultants trying to hit a diversity quota rather than telling a compelling story, players check out. People play fantasy games to escape the modern world, not to get a lecture on modern social politics while fighting a dragon. AAA games are just becoming more and more sanitized as their budgets get inflated. They have to appeal to everyone, offend no one, and tick every single box on the corporate spreadsheet. The end result is a product that feels completely soulless. It's no wonder that games like Clair Obscur Expedition 33 swoop in and steal all the awards away from them. Like seriously, that developer came out of nowhere with a fraction of the budget of these massive AAA studios, and they delivered an absolute banger of an RPG. Expedition 33 launched at $50, didn't have any of the bloated live service garbage in it, and went on to win Game of the Year while selling over 8 million copies by April of this year. 8 million copies for a turn-based RPG by an indie studio. That's absolutely insane, and they did it by having a clear, uncompromising creative vision. They didn't try to sanitize their dark fantasy world. They didn't try to force in a bunch of microtransactions. They just made a really good game. They focused on the gripping story and mechanics that actually challenged the player, because at the end of the day, we just want a solid handcrafted experience. And that's the reality that companies like Ubisoft and EA are currently slamming face first into. You can't just throw hundreds of millions of dollars at a project, fill it with safe, focus-tested slop, and expect people to blindly hand over their cash anymore. Gamers are tired. We're tired of the grind. We're tired of the corporate lecturing. We're tired of paying $70 for games that feel like chores. The fact that a AA game like Expedition 33 can completely embarrass the heavy hitters of the industry show that the old way of doing things is dead. Every AA game in the market is beating them out right now. And if Ubisoft thinks that simply remaking Black Flag is gonna save them from this industry-wide reckoning, they are sorely mistaken. So yeah, I'll probably end up playing the Black Flag remake when it drops. It looks pretty solid. I genuinely miss the days when Assassin's Creed was actually fun to play and didn't feel like a second job. But I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that Ubisoft is suddenly the good guy again. They're doing this because they have a gun to their head, not because they suddenly remembered how to care about their fans. And until they can prove that they can create something new and exciting without treating their player base like walking wallets, they're still on my bat list. They need to look at what the smaller studios are doing and take some serious notes, because nostalgia can only carry you so far before people realize that the ship is sinking. Anyway, this is RageWatch and I'm out. Thanks for watching.